1992. Vasili Mitrokhin walks out of the KGB archives for the last time. He carries 2 suitcases. Inside, decades of handwritten notes on Soviet secret operations. Among the files, references to contacts between the KGB and the Mossad, the 2 most feared intelligence agencies of the Cold War. The documents suggest they worked together. November 5, 1991. Robert Maxwell, media mogul, owner of the Daily Mirror and the New York Daily News, dies at sea. The official story says accident. The unanswered question, was he a double agent working for both sides? The Cold War was never a simple fight between good and evil. Between the Mossad and the KGB, official enemies on paper, shared interests carved out permanent gray zones. The 1960s and 1970s saw rising tensions between Israel and the Arab states. The Soviet Union pushed to expand its influence across the Middle East. In the cracks between those conflicts, discrete communication channels may have existed. The Mitrokhin Archive, declassified in 1999 by Christopher Andrew and Vasili Mitrokhin, describes secret meetings between KGB and Mossad officers. They discussed mutual interests. The Middle East. Intelligence sharing. The Wilson Center Digital Archive holds declassified Soviet diplomatic cables on the same subject. The CIA CREST Database adds more. The evidence says the conversations happened. The official story is simple. The Cold War was an ideological and military confrontation between East and West. Intelligence agencies were the tip of the spear. The Mossad and the KGB were presented as absolute enemies. Opposite goals. Zero cooperation. But declassified files and testimony from former officers suggest a different reality. A U.S. Senate report on the damage caused by the Jonathan Pollard affair, partially declassified in 2012, mentions classified information that flowed not just from the U.S. to Israel, but from the U.S. to the Soviet Union. The implication is clear. Even as official enemies, intelligence agencies traded information when it served them. The Mitrokhin Archive, CIA documents, and testimony from former agents all contradict the official line. Jonathan Pollard was arrested in 1985 for spying for Israel. The information he passed may have reached the Soviet Union, possibly traded for emigration approvals for Soviet Jews. Robert Maxwell worked for both agencies at the same time. The full scope of his role has never been confirmed. The Vienna and Helsinki channels, documented in the Mitrokhin Archive, were used for secret meetings between KGB and Mossad officers. But the most important document, the one that would prove a formal secret cooperation, has never been made public. And that is where the story takes a turn. The evidence is scattered but consistent. The Mitrokhin Archive, declassified in 1999, contains handwritten notes on decades of Soviet covert operations. Included, references to contacts between KGB and Mossad officers. The U.S. Senate report on the Pollard affair, partially declassified in 2012, confirms that classified information reached the Soviet Union. The CIA CREST database includes records of Soviet-Israeli intelligence relations. The memoirs of Marcus Klinberg, deputy director of the NES Ziona Biological Institute, arrested in 1983 for spying for the USSR, confirm he operated as a Soviet asset from the 1950s. Declassified Soviet diplomatic cables from the Wilson Center Digital Archive show that the KGB maintained discrete communication channels with Israeli intermediaries under Yuri Andropov. The Vienna and Helsinki channels appear in the Mitrokhin records. The CIA FOIA documents from 2013 on Operation T-Pax reveal Mossad cooperation with the CIA on intelligence about the Iranian Tud Party. The contacts were real. The question is how deep they ran. Here is what the evidence now confirms. The 2 most opposed intelligence agencies of the Cold War talked to each other when it was useful. The Mitrokhin Archive and the CIA records prove that KGB and Mossad officers met in secret. They discussed shared interests. The Middle East. Intelligence exchanges. Robert Maxwell worked for both sides simultaneously. His death, in 1991, raised questions that have never been answered. The secret cooperation between the Mossad and the KGB has never been officially acknowledged. But the documents exist. The testimony exists. The available evidence suggests the Cold War was not what it seemed. The consequences of those secret contacts are still visible. The Pollard affair continues to affect trust between the CIA and the Mossad. The Mitrokhin Archive remains partially unpublished. Key files on KGB Mossad contacts have never been released. The lessons from this period matter. Intelligence agencies today operate in a world that is more complex and more interconnected than the Cold War ever was. Understanding how they cooperated in secret, and what happened when they did, may help prevent the same abuses from repeating. The documents and testimony reveal a hidden chapter of the Cold War. The Mossad and the KGB, public enemies, met in private. They traded information. They pursued shared goals. The official story was incomplete. The real question remains unanswered. How many other secrets from that era are still buried? Subscribe to find out.